took multiple properties. I don't know if you know someone, but I know so many people, right? At that time and even before that time, just talking to people randomly and they said like, look, I own 6 houses. How can you own 6 houses? What do you do? Are you a surgeon? Like, are you an astronaut? Who are you? Like, and these are people with average pay, hourly wages. How does someone get to 6 properties, 12 investment properties? All right, folks, the common question: should I sell my house in 2025 or should I buy a house in 2025? All common questions, you hear it all the time. But why does it feel that we're playing Monopoly with the fox all the time? It feels not right. Something is missing. So I would like to get into this video what is going on, right? So half of the population looking at the glass is half full and the other half is half empty, right? So many are very optimistic. They're saying, look, nothing is happening. The gray clouds are behind us. So we're moving in the right direction and we will see a rise in real estate prices. So it is now the absolute best time to purchase and to become a homeowner, right? So is it really true? So I broke down this video into a couple of questions. I give you a few stories, what has been going on with sellers currently that have been selling for months and even years. So let's get right into the video. All right, so as mentioned, everybody is divided, right? Which is okay. I understand that. Other half is saying, look, we own real estate, we own high prices. The other half is saying, we want real estate, we want it cheaper. It is common and it happens in the market all the time. But what is actually happening and what will we see in the future? So why the market still feels overpriced? So even after the drop from 2022 peak, sellers held into fantasy pricing. So I'll get into a story how that happens, right? It is very common in today's marketplace. Just simply answered, sellers are saying, look, back then or 6 months or a year ago or 3 years ago, I could have gotten X, right? So the fault of a market continuously rising, right, since the 2000. Like we have seen a little blips that were, a quarter long, 2 quarters long, 6 months or so, right? But then again, we have seen that push and that rise and that unbeatable Canadian real estate bet, right, for over 2 decades, right? So now, are we actually shifting? And yes, we have been shifting since 2022. So peak mindset created a psychological anchor. People refused to adjust. And that's exactly what is happening, is that anchor and people won't let go, right? However, as time is moving on, some sellers are realizing that, listen, it is maybe game over. Maybe if I want to get out of the market, whether I need to retire, whether I need the funds, whether I cannot hold on anymore, I need to do what I got to do. So that's what's kind of happening in a nutshell. Buyers are facing different issues now, right? They're facing affordability issues. They're facing that they have to qualify for a mortgage, period. They're facing with higher taxes. They're facing with higher bills. They're facing with higher economical uncertainties. And now everything else looming, right? Tariffs, unemployment, losses, that security is almost gone. It's not gone completely, but it's almost gone, right? So people are questioning now. Look, if I need to spend my hard-earned money for a deposit and then have a mortgage and everything else double or triple the amount versus me renting the same house for the same price, it doesn't make financial sense other than being honorable, owning something, or other than have the pride in owning that. Other than that, it doesn't make financial sense whatsoever. So let's get into some examples here, and I have two examples that are very recent, right? And this is what's happening. So example number one, Mississauga Heartland. If you don't know where that is, that's the northern part of Mississauga, which is Britannia, Mavis, 401 and Mavis and all of that stuff. There are a bunch of stores there. They got a bunch of dealerships, half industrial, half residential, whatever. Even around that block, they have all the airplanes landing to our airport here in Pearson, Toronto, right? So the noise pollution, traffic, commercial, mixed residential, and all of that stuff. But listen, people live there, and at one point in time, it was affordable. People that had no choice or they wanted to get into the market, that was a window of opportunity. However, came with some setbacks, but it is what it is, right? So this is what's happening. So they listed a property for $1,349,000. They were holding on to it. It's a detached property, beautiful lot, oversized lot in a subdivision. Beautiful, nice finishes, nothing wrong with the property. However, this price, right? This price is the peak pricing fantasy at $1,349,000. So they kept clinging on it. They kept holding on to it. They were claiming their house is the best in the world, in the pocket, in that community, you name it, right? And they were maybe right. I don't know. However, it took them a year. It took them a year before they actually sold it for $1,130,000. That's a huge haircut, right? So they started with a fantasy mindset, but then they wanted to get out, and the only thing to do is to actually drop the price to the current market value today, right? All right. So second, North Mississauga location, north of Mississauga towards Caledon and all of that stuff. Acreage, beautiful house, has an auxiliary building, stunning, beautiful. All right. Everything makes sense. However, they listed the property for $4.5 million. They held on it. They listed it in 2024. They were obviously claiming that their acreage is the best acreage in the world and their house and yada, 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 right? And however, realtors approached and said, look, there are some of these things that in that price point today, you will not be able to get it because of your 8-foot ceilings in the house and this and that and the other, right? Like you're on a main street per se or whatever. So yes, you have land, but there's some other factors. But then they came up with that solution. Look, back then the properties were selling at $4.5 million and I demand the same. So obviously the property sat for over a year on the market and it's still not sold. And then they reduced it overnight to $3.2 million. Imagine this for a second. All right, imagine $1.3 million cut. And then obviously you have the other side of the, my glass is half full type of people saying like, look, nothing is wrong. Freehold property holds value. Well, this guy cut his value by 1.3 million from the peak. The other gentleman cut his value by, what is it, $230,000 on a detached home in Heartland. Do you understand what I'm saying? So the problem is that if you are not pushed to sell, you can demand whatever you want. But if you're pushed to sell and you need to sell, you need to correct and you need to adjust the actual price in order to sell, or you won't sell, right? And then for the buyers, obviously, the pool of listings in Southern Ontario, and that's not even covering it all, right? Like Southern Ontario is huge. I'm just saying like, an hour and a half from Toronto, right? Or maybe 2 hours, right? So we have close to 75,000 listings, right? So even buyers are now, contemplating, waiting, holding on, calculating. I'm not blaming them, but they're saying, look, if I can have X at a million here, then they drag the buyer agent, 2 hours from Toronto, and they say, hey, look, I can have a better property 2 hours from Toronto, right? Like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, it's not geared or focused how it used to be. What can I afford? What is the community? What's the town or the city? And what do I need, right? And then based on that, you kind of put yourself on that monopoly board. But it seems like that the fox across from you playing this game of monopoly knows how to play it. And we know that foxes are very clever. So now the basically the hangover, right? Like a lot of people got that, fake boom, which is literally a fake boom, right? Technically, on paper, we saw it. But the stimulants, the money printing machine making, everything was turned to the max, and everything felt that whoever touches it turns into gold. It's as simple as that. So it was not the production of your ability to generate, 10x, 30% more, 100% more. It was just the market was flooded, it was fueled, and it was happening. It was a phenomenon. But anyways, so this is the problem. Now, during that time or era, all right, maxed out credits, right? You might have heard that, but people maxed out because they saw an opportunity. And with opportunity, what you want to do is go there first. You want to invest max because it's an opportunity. It's a good return on investment, and you want to do it as fast as humanly possible. And the second factor or an equation is you want to invest as much as possible because it's amazing, right? That return on investment. So maxed out credit, took multiple properties. I don't know if you know someone, but I know so many people, right? At that time and even before that time, just talking to people randomly, and they said like, look, I own 6 houses. How can you own 6 houses? What do you do? Are you a surgeon? Like, are you an astronaut? Who are you? Like, and these are people with average pay, hourly wages. How does someone get to 6 properties, 12 investment properties? Where? How? Right? So the only way to do it, if you gamble it, right? If you risk it, if you risk on that monopoly board every single time, and you just hope you don't step on somebody else's lot. But hold on a second. During that period, it doesn't matter where you step. You didn't pay a penalty. You just collected the $200 every time you went around that board, right? Like the Monopoly game. And it kept going. But now the shift is here, guys. So every time you need to step, plus you need to pay and you need to hold on to your own properties in order to stay in the game, right? So didn't plan for renewal shocks, right? Some did, but many didn't. And what would they say at the time, right? With the low ones and the low twos interest rates back in the day, they were saying, well, look, the banks cannot increase rates, and even if they do, it's gonna be 1/4% to 1/2%. Are you kidding me? They were increasing interest rates in record levels ever seen in Canada. Like a hockey stick, right? Sure they can, of course they can, right? But many did not plan or had a buffer, an exit strategy, plan B, C, D, you name it, right? So now, Visa cards are maxed, right? There are many people out there. They're holding by a thread, and they're maxed out to the max, right? Pre-con is, let's call it what it is. It is collapsing. On top of that, I was calling out pre-construction, right? Like these condos and all of that stuff for a long time, for years now, right? And check this out. With pre-construction condos, there's a lot more tied in, right? I believe at this point, Canada is literally holding 500,000 of these employees. Like if you would kind of dissect, like, designers, agents, construction workers, laborers, you name it, everything is kind of tied. So it's 500,000 people at stake because some of these projects are never going to be built. They're done, they're toast, they're bankrupt, they're finished, right? So 500,000 on that, right? Renewals are here. A lot of current existing real estate, it's literally tied to that pre-construction. How? Because people bored against their homes and they bought all these units, right? So imagine, like even in 2020 or 2021, 2022, whatever, right? Like how many people do you know personally that had, like, 150, 200, $300,000 sitting in their savings account, and one day they woke up and they said, I'm just gonna buy a condo, right? No, they borrowed against their current home because everything was ludicrous. Let's go. My property went up. I have so much money. Let me reinvest and all that stuff. So the collapse of that condo market is a big, big weight on our economy and real estate future. All right, rental market is tight. I don't care what you say, but it is tight, right? And on top of that, there's these tenants, most of them are not even good quality, right? Like you get the mix and the match and you cannot verify them. Colleagues know what I'm talking about. Real estate agents know what I'm talking about. Landlords know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Because it's hard to verify, right? They give you all these papers, they give you all kinds of stuff, but at the end of the day, when you go to verify, you cannot verify. So it's a red flag. It's a red scream altogether, right? So you stop. Don't take just anybody. I know it's painful and it's tight and it's hard, but don't take anybody into your property. All right. So loan delinquencies are on the rise. So mortgages and loans, and they're rising so quickly that it's speed of light. All right. So the surface illusion, but reality is cracking. On the outside, it still looks good, but it's all surface level. Here are some mental behaviors and illusions people are stuck in, right? So I need to talk to you about this, all right? Because it's that illusion, right? Like it seems like, or it feels like that people are almost ashamed, right? Like imagine you're sitting and maybe you're suffering at the moment and it's painful, and I'm sorry to hear that, but maybe you're sitting there and you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to make my payments? I'm in debt here, I have visa, this mortgage, all these properties, but I cannot make that move because my neighbor, my family members, my wife, maybe a partner, spouse, you name it, are gonna think we're not worthy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, how are people going to look at us? Well, who cares? Save yourself. That's the number one, right? So, flexing but drowning. New cars, renovated kitchens, designer clothes, all on credit. And I heard it. Like, I even heard a story recently of somebody changing a vehicle. All right. And I said, how can they do that? But from my understanding, it's that visual excuse, right? Everything is kind of unshaky, but they got a new car. Do you understand what I'm saying? He's like, oh my gosh, now let us scratch our heads. And how did that person get on? They gotta have money. Well, let me tell you, nobody cares, right? They maybe care for a day or two, but at the end of the day, you're stuck with that payment for 60 months if you're lucky, because some people are extending their cars to 90 months. I don't even know if it exists. 72 exists for sure. But like there's some crazy plans out there, all right? So Instagram rich, wallet broke. Everything curated online, but real bank accounts are negative. All right, guys, you guys know it, right? Social media and all of that stuff, like I see it all the time, and it is just that fake image that it's given at that given moment, like it's not right, right? Like I've seen that. Like I've seen that and so many times. I'm sure you have too. So let me relate. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine we're sitting at a normal dinner at a friend's house, backyard, nothing is happening. We're just obviously chatting. Some of us not even maybe having fun. We're tired from work or whatever, right? But as soon as someone takes a phone and says, look, we're gonna take a selfie, check this out, this is what happens. Like, what are you doing? If you're not having fun, you're not having fun. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that illusion, that split second, everybody's trying to make it look as good, as best as possible. Like I've even seen people that I know, right, pose beside cars that are not theirs. And I asked them, I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like, you know what I mean? Like you're posing beside like a $450,000 Porsche, right? It's not even yours. Like, I don't care. People are liking it. I'm going viral. People are sharing it and all of that stuff. So, but somebody out there sees like a 23-year-old kid, right, beside a $500,000 Porsche, and they're sitting with 3 kids at home, right, thinking my life sucks. It doesn't. It's fake. 99% of it, it's fake, and you shouldn't care. Maybe entertainment purpose, fine. Like it, share it, do whatever you gotta do. But just remember that it's fake, and who cares, all right? So kicking the can. People refinancing again and again, pushing pain further instead of solving it. I have seen it. I heard it. Some people told me, many people didn't, and maybe they shouldn't. It doesn't matter. But I'm like, what are you doing? Like you're already sinking. Now you literally pouring fuel on it. It's like, well, don't worry about it. It'll be fixed. My glass is always half full. Let me tell you, positive thinking, yoga, meditation, manifestation. I'm like, holy smokes, man. Are you kidding me right now? You're drowning already. Now you're taking on more because somebody else out there is going to fix your problem. Nobody's out there to fix it. All right? But I don't know what it is, right? Like it's maybe a sickness. Like they just keep going and borrowing and the party goes on. All right. So culture pressure, selling feels like failure. So many people clinging to their assets while going broke inside. I already mentioned this, right? So they just feel maybe ashamed. They're just ashamed that if they downsize or if they do something that's not according to a standard of somebody else's standard, they would look broke. In fact, they are broke. All right. So should you buy or sell in 2025? This is a $1 million question. If you're buying, don't chase a bottom, chase sustainability, right? So yes, if you have 5% down, should you buy a house? No. If you have 10% down, should you buy a house? No, right? So at least 20% down should be a norm. Like this is not an advice. Please seek professional advice from whoever. However, right? You need 20% down and you need to be able to sustain yourself. It is a very simple and easy math, right? If your net income, family income is $8,000 or $10,000 a month, that's it. You calculate based on that. You know how much things cost. You pre-qualify yourself. You know how much your mortgage is going to be, right? And you base it on that. If it doesn't make sense, and most of the time it doesn't, you don't do it. It is very, very simple. If you're selling, ask yourself if you're ready to ride for another 2 to 3 years of pressure, right? Yes, this is very important. If you're selling, if you're a market value, right? You have to look at your competition. You have to look what's going on, and you have to be competitive. So if you're not competitive, you're going to be sitting on the market. As simple as that, right? Now, if you want to sell, you got to have a plan, obviously, right? But if you're selling and maybe we're going to sell and maybe not, it's not strong enough plan, don't do this to yourself or the family. Nobody's going to show up across the globe and just give you an offer that you like. It used to happen years ago, not today. Those days are over, finished. All right. Final word, don't be fooled by the calm. All right, so this is something that I have mentioned many times, right? And it seems like every time I make a video like this, all right, it takes, it's a hibernation period of 3 months, 6 months, maybe even a year before things be like, oh my gosh, it's here. And then, the level goes here, and then people write it out, and then again, another step down, and then people write it out. That's what it feels like, right? So, and it is like that, right? So 2022, I was saying it, and then 2023 happened. And then everybody hoping for 2024 to recover. I said, like, with all the respect, it's not gonna recover, right? So flatten out a little bit. Then 2025 was the big year, right? The boom in June, right? Of each year, including, right, 2025, and the boom in springtime and all of that stuff, right? But it didn't happen. So now there's so much pressure on 2026. And I highly doubt that we will see a boom or that we will see a rise in real estate, because there's so much stuff that we need to clear, right? We need to clear a lot of stuff. We're drowning, whether it's on high level or household level. We're drowning in so much stuff that, by the time we clear it, it could be half a decade, could be a decade before we clear everything, that we have a clear path, unless who knows what we're going to do in between, right? So I truly hope that you gain some value. Maybe I opened your eyes, right, to a different perspective. I'm not claiming I'm right. Do your own due diligence, do your own research, but however, try to live a stable life versus a fake life. So please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.